What's up, guys? D-Rock1992 here. For this next video, I'm going to be talking about the movies that came out this month, the month of December. We're not quite done and over with December yet, but a lot of the major movies, or pretty much all of the major movies, have been released here in December. So I'm going to talk about the films of December. I'm going to start out with the weekend of December 2nd, and there are three movies here that I want to talk about. First movie is the animated film Sing. Sing is an animated film which has a big voice cast. Matthew McConaughey, Reese Witherspoon, Seth MacFarlane, John C. Reilly, Scarlett Johansson, Taron Egerton. So there are a lot of big names in this film, as you would expect from an animated film, a lot of big names. Sing's about a Matthew McConaughey's character who's a koala who has to try to save a movie theater by hosting a talent competition. That's basically what I think the plot is and all that. So far, what Sing has done: $75 million budget, and it's made $162.9 million. So it's done well at the box office. And critically, it received a 71% on Rotten Tomatoes. And also, CinemaScore gave the film an A. So audiences really liked it, made a lot of money, and it got pretty good reviews critically for Rotten Tomatoes. Next film I'm going to talk about is a movie that came out in a limited release this month, and that was The Comedian. Robert De Niro and Leslie Mann and Danny DeVito but all star in this film. Harvey Keitel as well. The Comedian's about this guy. Robert De Niro's character is a comedian, and hence the name The Comedian. So it has, like I said, it's been a limited release for this movie, but so far it's only received a 17% on Rotten Tomatoes. Not a good review for this movie at all, according to Rotten Tomatoes. It could change a little bit, but so far not so good. And then the next movie I'm going to talk about here is Jackie, which is a movie about Jackie Kennedy, a biopic about a biographical drama film about Jackie Kennedy Onassis. Jackie Kennedy was the wife of John F. Kennedy, and she had quite the life. She was one of the best first ladies of all time to President JFK. Natalie Portman stars as Jackie Kennedy. So overall, this movie on a $9 million budget made only $4.2 million. So it definitely did not do well at the box office. A smaller film for sure. But critically, it really did a good job, an 88% on Rotten Tomatoes. And I've heard that Natalie Portman kills it as Jackie Kennedy, for one thing. And so, it's a movie that could get, you could see it get nominated for an Oscar, for sure. So that's the movie Jackie. Next weekend that I'm going to talk about here is December 9th. And there were two movies that I'm going to talk about that came out that weekend. La La Land is the first one. La La Land is a romantic musical starring Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone. Those two actors have teamed up in other movies. Gangster Squad was one of them. And there was another one they did, Crazy Stupid Love. So these two have collaborated before, and they've been very successful. So these two, the movie's about a dancer, I believe, and a musician and an actress who fall in love. So, so, yeah, this movie, I've heard a lot of good things about this film, and that Emma Stone could get nominated for an Oscar for this film. La La Land, on a $30 million budget, it made $39.9 million, so a pretty successful film. I mean, it didn't do a lot of great things at the box office, but critically, the film received a 92% on Rotten Tomatoes, and Emma Stone's gotten a lot of the praise. Like I said, she could get nominated for an Oscar, and La La Land could be in the running for Best Picture. You really could see that for sure. And Emma Stone's been nominated before for Birdman from a couple years ago, and she only got nominated, though. I don't think she won. So La La Land has also been on a lot of critics' lists for top 10. There was one guy in particular, I think, who had it at number 1, I believe, that I watched for YouTube. So this movie's gotten a lot of critical acclaim. Anyway, the next movie I'm going to talk about is one that I didn't get to see, but I really wanted to, but I didn't get to see, is Office Christmas Party. Another Christmas movie. It stars a big-time cast: Jason Bateman, Olivia Munn, Vanessa Bayer, Kate McKinnon, Jennifer Aniston, T.J. Miller, and company. So the movie's about this guy has to try to. This guy has got to try to throw a big party and impress a client to try to keep his spot in the company or something like that. Anyway, Office Christmas Party, on a $45 million budget, has made $83.4 million overall. So it's done well. It's done pretty well box office wise. Critically, it only received a 43% on Rotten Tomatoes, so it didn't do extremely great with Rotten Tomatoes. Audiences that did see this film gave the film a B, so that's pretty good. It just didn't, it made some money though, so the right audience got to see this film and they enjoyed it for the most part. Next film next weekend I'm going to talk about here is December 16th. And there's going to be 4 movies that I'm going to talk about here for this. The first one I'm going to talk about is the latest Star Wars adventure, Star Wars Rogue One. Have not gotten to see this movie yet. I'd like to see it at some point, though. Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, takes place before Episode 4, A New Hope. This talks about the Rebel Empire's plans to steal the Death Star plans. To steal the plans for the Death Star. This movie marks the return of Darth Vader, for one thing. James Earl Jones comes back to voice Darth Vader. Felicity Jones is the main character in the movie. Mads Mikkelsen is also in this film. Forrest Whitaker also pops up in this movie. So, Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. So far, on a $200 million budget, has made $653.9 million. The last 2 weekends, Star Wars The Force Awakens has been number 1 at the box office. So, it's been very successful. Thus far, it has been very successful. Critically, this movie received an 85% on Rotten Tomatoes. So, It is a very good grade for Rotten Tomatoes, and audiences who saw this film really liked it. They gave it an A out of an A plus to F scale according to CinemaScore. So they really enjoyed this film. It's a movie that I really do want to see for sure. Maybe I'll get to see it at some point, but it's a very anticipated film, especially after I saw Episode 7, The Force Awakens from last year. I'm very excited about this movie, and I'd like to see it. Next movie I'm going to talk about is a highly anticipated film, an anticipated Oscar bait film, Collateral Beauty. Collateral Beauty stars Will Smith, Helen Mirren, Edward Norton, Kate Winslet, Keira Knightley, and others. Collateral Beauty is about a man who has to cope with his daughter's death by writing letters to time, death, and love. It is a very emotional film from what I've heard, but this movie was a huge disappointment. Collateral Beauty so far, on a $36 million budget, it has made $31.8 million. So far it hasn't. It'll probably make its budget back. But critically, however, this movie received a 13% on Rotten Tomatoes according to the critics. So it was panned by the critics. But the audiences who went to see this film gave it an A-. So they were very happy with this film. They liked the film for sure. So, just gonna plug in my computer here. It's getting low on battery power. So, next film I'm going to talk about here is the movie Fences. Fences stars Denzel Washington. He directs and he stars in the movie. He also stars alongside Viola Davis. This movie is based on a play by a playwright called August Wilson. Denzel Washington brought this movie to the big screen, but before he did that, he performed the play on Broadway, and Viola Davis did as well. This movie's about a former Negro League baseball player a rejected Negro League baseball player who is angry that he couldn't really make a career out of baseball because of the racial discrimination of the times. I think that's one of the main things of this movie. So Fences, on a $24 million budget, it's made $17.4 million. So it'll probably make more money as we go along, but critically, however, this movie received a 94% on Rotten Tomatoes, so it's a good grade. Audiences that have seen this movie so far gave it an A-. So, excuse me. So this movie was successful with the critics, and people who did see it, they liked it. The next movie that I'm going to talk about is The Founder. The Founder is stars Michael Keaton, Nick Offerman and John Carroll Lynch also are in this film as well. This is the story about McDonald's, the fast food empire. And this is the story about Michael Keaton's character who steals the empire right underneath the McDonald brothers, noses, basically. So the founder is in a limited release right now. It'll open wide next year for January 20th of 2017. On a $7 million budget, it's made $2.1 million thus far. That's going to change. Critically, it received an 80% on Rotten Tomatoes, so good, solid reviews. For sure, and this is a movie that I'm excited to see because I'm fascinated by a lot of biopics about famous people, famous things, so I'm kind of excited about it. Next weekend in December is December 21st. December 21st, there were 3 wide release films that came out, and I'll talk about all 3 of them. The first movie is the latest video game movie, Assassin's Creed, based on the popular video game. I never played Assassin's Creed, so I don't really know much about the game, but I do know the actors in this film. Michael Fassbender, Marion Cotillard, Jeremy Irons are in this movie. And Assassin's Creed, on a $125 million budget, made $42.7 million thus far. It's still going to make money, but it's critically, it only received an 18% on Rotten Tomatoes, so it did not do well with critics. And a lot of video game movies do not do well with critics anyway. Video game movies have had a bad reputation in Hollywood as being bad films. Warcraft did not do extremely well in the U.S. It did well overseas, but it didn't do well in the U.S. And Assassin's Creed looks like the same thing. Audiences who did see Assassin's Creed, though, they gave it a B+. But a lot of Assassin's Creed fans went to see the movie, probably, so they really, a lot of those fans probably really enjoyed the film. Next film that I'm going to talk about, it was a very highly anticipated film from this year, Passengers. 2 big stars of today star in this movie, Jennifer Lawrence and Chris Pratt. Passengers is it's a science fiction adventure film about these 2 people who wake up from a hibernation, and trouble ensues on their spaceship. On a $110 million budget, it's made only $46.1 million, but it's going to make money, But the biggest surprise, perhaps, is that critically this movie did not do well. It only received a 31% on Rotten Tomatoes. And audiences gave this movie a grade of B, so a solid grade for sure for the people who did see the movie. But this is one that kind of proves that 2 stars can't carry a film anymore. The star power of Jennifer Lawrence and Chris Pratt could not save this movie. So, there you go. It just proves that. Next movie I'm going to talk about is Patriots Day, which is a biopic about the events that happened at the 2013 Boston Marathon, where a lot of people lost their lives. We had, the Boston police and a lot of law officials had to search for the 2 bombers. Patriots Day stars Mark Wahlberg, J.K. Simmons, John Goodman, Kevin Bacon, Michelle Monaghan. So far, on a $45 million budget, it's only received $433,411. It is limited, so it opened on a limited release December 21st. It's going to expand nationwide January 13th of next year, so it'll definitely receive more money. Critically, it received an 80% on Rotten Tomatoes, so it's definitely it's definitely a good review. A good review for Rotten Tomatoes and all that. It's a movie I'm looking forward to see, you know? I like those kind of biopic type, based on true story films. I do like those. There were a couple movies that came out December 23rd. Actually, 3 that I want to talk about here. First one I want to talk about is the movie Why Him? Stars Bryan Cranston, James Franco, Zoe Deutch, Megan Mullally. So this movie is about a boyfriend and girlfriend who are scheduled to get married. The father, whose daughter is getting married, he doesn't like the fiance. So it's a battle between him and the fiance. It's a battle between them. It's a romantic comedy film. It so far, on a $38 million budget, it received $24 million at the box office. So it'll probably make its money back, I imagine. But critically, however, it only received a 40% on Rotten Tomatoes, so it didn't do very well with critics. Cinema Score, however, for the people who did see this film, gave the film a B+. So a pretty good grade for this movie. And it's actually a movie I'm looking forward to seeing. You know, it's one of those films that I'd like to see at some point. The next film that I want to talk about here is A Monster Calls. It's a fantasy drama film. It's starring Sigourney Weaver, Felicity Jones, Liam Neeson. It is, so far for this movie, it has a limited release. It's going to be coming out wide January 6th of next year. On a $43 million budget thus far, it made $30.2 million. Critically, it received an 89% on Rotten Tomatoes, so a very good review, for sure. So it's one that I probably may not see, but an interesting film for sure. Next film I want to talk about on the list is the movie Silence, the latest Martin Scorsese directed film. Martin Scorsese is considered one of the greatest directors of all time, and I definitely agree with that sentiment. This movie stars Andrew Garfield, Adam Driver, Liam Neeson. It's about Andrew Garfield and Adam Driver's characters are two Jesuit priests who have to rescue their mentor from Japan. They want to locate their missing mentor and spread Catholicism in Japan. It's a passion project of Martin Scorsese's because he tried to get the film made. He had developed this project for over 25 years. So far, it has, and it's probably going to be it's another limited release going wide January 6th of next year. So far, it's made, on a $50 million budget, it's made $205,600. So it's going to make money for sure at the box office. Just, it's going to make a lot of money in 2017 for sure, probably. Based on the critical reception for this movie, though, probably going to make some money. An 89% on Rotten Tomatoes overall. So it's a very good review. A lot of praise has been given to Martin Scorsese's direction. You know, one of the best directors of all time. I mean, he's definitely done a lot in his career. This is a movie that could get nominated for Best Picture. It could be a movie nominated for Best Director. And many others as well. Best Director, maybe Best Actor. You know, you could see something good come out of this film, for sure. Awards, as far as awards go. And then there are 4 other films that I'd like to talk about here that came out December 25th. The first one is a movie called Gold. It came out on a limited release December 25th. It'll be coming out wide January 27th of next year. And Gold stars Matthew McConaughey and Bryce Dallas Howard, Edgar Ramirez. So it's a movie I wanted to mention because of the star power. The Matthew McConaughey's the main star of this movie. Next movie I want to talk about is 20th Century Women. This movie's gotten a lot of buzz because of the performance of Annette Bening. Annette Bening stars in this movie, Elle Fanning. So far, it's made $40,296 at the box office. It's probably going to get... it's probably going to go wider in theaters next year. 20th Century Women is a 92% on Rotten Tomatoes. Has a 92% on Rotten Tomatoes, and from what I've heard from this film, Annette Bening's getting a lot of praise for her performance. Next film I'm going to talk about is Hidden Figures. I've seen trailers for this film a lot on TV. It looks like a pretty interesting film. Hidden Figures stars Taraji P. Henson, Octavia Spencer, Janelle Monáe, Kevin Costner, Kirsten Dunst, Jim Parsons. Taraji P. Henson, this is a biopic about an African-American mathematician named Katherine Johnson who calculated flight trajectories for Project Mercury and the 1969 Apollo 11 flight to the moon. So Hidden Figures so far has made $1.3 million on a $25 million budget. Another movie that's it's going to be released wide January 6th of next year. Critically, it received a 92% on Rotten Tomatoes. So it's very critically received and probably up for discussion for Oscar season, you know. Probably going to be a factor in the Oscars come next year. And then the final film that I'm going to talk about for December is another Ben Affleck movie from this year, Live by Night. Ben Affleck directs this movie. This is Affleck's 4th directed film. Gone Baby Gone, The Town, and Argo were his other directed films. So Live by Night is directed by Affleck and stars Ben Affleck. This is about a guy who... This is about Joe Coughlin. It's a crime drama film. It's about Joe Coughlin, who is a bootlegger and becomes a notorious gangster. Ben Affleck, Elle Fanning, Sienna Miller, Brendan Gleeson, Zoe Saldana, they star in this film. It came on a limited release. It's going to have a wide release on January 13th of next year. So far, on a $65 million budget, it's made $66,000. So, however, critically, this movie did not do well critically. a 39% on Rotten Tomatoes. So, unfortunately, the movie was very highly anticipated, for one thing, because Ben Affleck is an accomplished director. All three of his films that he directed are critically acclaimed. This movie, not so much. So, Live by Night was a disappointment for critics, probably. Definitely a lot of critics. So that is it for the month of December. The final month of the year. I can't believe it. We're into 2017 in just a couple days. It's something. This year was a memorable year for sure. And for December in particular, we had a lot of Oscar bait movies that had limited releases that are coming out wide next year. So you're going to see a lot of movies that came out last year that are coming out this year. That came out this year that are going to be wide releases next year. So yeah, that is it for this video. The final month overview video of the year of 2016. So that's it for this video. D-Rock 1992 out.